Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahawashi, Bahasham, Barakahakwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the Brother Ra'aya with another video, and in this video, I'll be profiling an article on dailyhodl.com titled, Europe Must Reduce Reliance on U.S. Dollar, says French President Emmanuel Macron. And hey, this is just another example of biblical prophecy taking place as we speak, because America's allies, especially her European allies, are going to turn against her at some point during World War III and ally themselves with America's enemies like Russia and China, and they're all together going to shoot 200 million nuclear missiles onto the United States of America, turning it into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. And also, this is an example of what Esau Edom's current power structure, his kingdom, that NATO EU alliance that the U.S. is a part of, the last leg of the fourth beast in Daniel chapter 2, those iron toes mixed with miry clay breaking apart. And what did Yahawashi say in Mark chapter 3 about a kingdom being divided? This is Mark chapter 3, verses 24 to 25. And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. Point blank, period. A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. And we're living in the twilight hours of Esau Edom, the so-called white man's global rulership. Hey, you can look at it from these different European countries to the United States of America to, again, those iron toes mixed with miry clay as a whole. Hey, they're divided internally and between their allies. You've got their morals declining with all those Western nations pushing what? The alphabet group, beginning with LG. Their financial systems are on the decline. Hey, their birth rates are on the decline. Their militaries are overextended, etc., etc. But now let's get into a little bit of this article. French President Emmanuel Macron says all of Europe should focus on lowering its dependence on the U.S. dollar. Hey, because contrary to popular belief, these Western European nations, hey, are vassal states to the United States of America. Whenever the United States of America does anything economically, politically, or militarily, hey, they bully their European allies into following suit, most of the times to their detriment. Just look at this whole situation with the military conflict in Ukraine. The U.S. was heavily pushing for sanctions on Russia, and what? Her European allies followed suit. And now it's these European countries that are feeling the blowback from sanctions on Russia, with Russia pulling back its exports on natural gas, oil, and other resources to these European nations. And then whenever the U.S. goes to war with these different countries, they think of the war in Iraq, the Libyan civil war, or the Syrian civil war. When those countries get destabilized and those refugees leave those countries, where do they usually go? To Europe, further burdening their financial system. Hey, it's only so long before you can poke a dog with a stick, so to speak, before it bites back. And we're seeing an example of these dogs biting back. Hey, these European nations, and you've been seeing it a lot lately with France, starting to reevaluate their relationship with the United States of America. And again, like I said at the beginning of the video, what it's ultimately going to lead to is at some point during World War III, America's allies, especially her European allies, her fellow Edomite allies, turning against her and allying themselves with America's enemies to shoot those nukes onto her. In a new interview with Politico, President Macron says European leaders should soften ties to America and focus on staying out of a potential conflict between China and the U.S. over Taiwan. The comments follow Macron's 3-day trip to China and a high-profile meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. And we can see that China and Russia have been heavily pushing for de-dollarization amongst these different countries, with what? The BRICS nations trading in their own national currencies and talking about coming up with digital currencies that are backed by what? Gold and silver and natural resources that those countries naturally have. And with each passing day, more and more nations are joining up with the BRICS. And as we're seeing in this article, even America's own European allies are starting to take a different look and have a different perspective on doing deals with America's enemies. And then lest we forget, China just brokered an historic peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And Saudi Arabia just joined the Shanghai, what's it called? I know the acronym for it is SCO, but I know it's the Shanghai something. I think it's like the Shanghai Cooperation Group or something like that. And hey, Saudi Arabia has been a linchpin for keeping up the US dollar through the petrodollar, only allowing their oil to be sold in dollars. But with Saudi Arabia cozying up more and more to China, hey, what could that spell? Them opening up trade in their oil in other currencies, such as the yuan or the ruble. Hey, the days of the United States dollar, as well as the US, are numbered. And also, the days of Esau Edom's rulership as a whole are numbered. When it comes to global dependence on the dollar, Macron specifically says Europe should lower its need to rely on the extraterritoriality of the US dollar. If the tensions between the two superpowers heat up, we won't have the time nor the resources to finance our strategic autonomy, and we will become vassals, which these Western European nations already are vassals to the US. Again, whenever the US says jump, these European nations say how high, especially to their own detriment. Another example, look at the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. That was a major project between Germany and Russia, and then the US sabotaged it. So what? Now Germany and these other European nations have to rely on getting oil and natural gas from the US at a much higher cost than what they would have from Russia. The dollar has played a central role in global trade and the global monetary system for decades, acting as the world's sole reserve currency. It is by far the dominant currency in the foreign exchange market, and it is the most widely used currency for international transactions. But recent international efforts have focused on ending the world's long-standing need to engage with the dollar. A group of economically aligned nations known as the BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, South Africa, and including many other nations that are starting to join onto that economic bloc, are reportedly gearing up to launch an alternative currency that would circumvent the dollar. The new currency could be pegged to precious metals or other hard assets. BRICS stands for the countries of Brazil, Russia, India, though Iran's a part of it too, China and South Africa, a number of additional nations including Saudi Arabia, Argentina, Iran, Indonesia, Turkey, another NATO nation, which is ultimately going to turn against the U.S. and the West during World War III to ally themselves with Russia. Go read Ezekiel chapter 38. Gomer being an ally unto Gog, the biblical name for Russia, and Egypt have reportedly expressed interest in joining the alliance. So that's it with this article. But again, we can see that this kingdom of Esau Edoms, that last leg of the fourth beast in Daniel chapter 2, those iron toes mixed with miry clay, are starting to divide. And again, if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. Now let's get back into these precepts. This is Daniel chapter 2. I'm going to start at verse 40. And this is dealing with the dream of the statue of a man made of different metals that King Nebuchadnezzar of the Neo-Babylonian Empire had, and whom the prophet Daniel interpreted for him. And those different metals represented the different heathen kingdoms that would rule before the ushering in of the kingdom of heaven under the true children of Israel, known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today, which will be an eternal kingdom, the final kingdom, like that show, The Last Kingdom. And you had the head of gold, which was the Neo-Babylonian Empire, the arms and the breasts of silver, the Medo-Persian Empire, the thighs and the belly of brass, the Grecian Edomite kingdoms, and the legs of iron, as it starts in verse 40, the Roman pagan Edomite Empire. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaketh in pieces and subdueth all things, and as iron that breaketh all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. And now we're going into the last leg of that fourth kingdom, those iron toes mixed with miry clay, which began to come into fruition during the Renaissance period when the Edomites started coming back into power out of the Dark Ages. And whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, that reincarnated Roman Empire, the NATO-EU alliance that the U.S. is a part of, and the part of clay refers to the stronger nations in this system, such as the U.S., Britain, France, Germany, and the part of clay, the weaker nations, which are usually referred to as the pigs, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, and Spain. And it can also refer to how this current system is broken into two parts. You have NATO, which is the stronger part, the iron part, and then the economic part of it, the EU, the clay. And as it says, the kingdom shall be divided. And as we read in that article, we can see that this kingdom is starting to divide amongst itself. You've got America's European allies starting to look at the U.S. as not having their best interests at heart, and that they're nothing more than patsies for the U.S., and that whatever the U.S. does, they drag their European allies into it, and they're the ones that usually feel the blowback from it. So we have President Emmanuel Macron going to China and talking to Xi Jinping, and then afterwards is talking about how the European nations need to start lowering their reliance on the US dollar. Again, a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. But there shall be in it of the strength of iron, for as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And ultimately, this kingdom is going to be completely broken to pieces. But now, I'm going to go to the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, and it's only one chapter. And I'm going to start at verse 1 and jump around a bit. And this whole chapter is dedicated to you Edomites and your downfall. As the header reads, Edom will be humbled. The vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord Yahweh concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. And what are we seeing? A lot of these different nations starting to look at the U.S. and the West sideways, and what? Looking towards the East, looking towards Russia and China and these BRICS nations, seeing that that's a better alternative than continuing to get fucked over by the Western economic system, that IMF, International Monetary Fund. And this is ultimately going to go from economics, to throwing lead at each other. Currency wars turn into hot wars, as Gerald Celente says. But now I'm going to jump down to verse 7. All the men of thy confederacy, or your allies, have brought thee even to the border, and this is speaking of the United States of America, the men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. An example being America's European allies. What? We'll go along with you in throwing sanctions on Russia over Ukraine, and we'll go along with you in being your allies in these different wars. All the while, they're looking to do backdoor deals with America's enemies, like Russia and China, to what? Get natural gas and oil through more black market means, or looking towards alternatives to using the US dollar, and prevailed against thee, ultimately turning against them. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. Hey, these European nations receiving all that money and weapons to upkeep NATO, eventually laying that wound under the US and turning those very same weapons against the US. There was none understanding in him. Now I'm going to close it out in Revelation chapter 17, verse 16. What I've been talking about all throughout the video, America's allies using those nukes on her. This is Revelation 17, verse 16. And the 10 horns referring to the EU or European Union, beginning with the first 10 common markets of the EU, back when it was known as the European Economic Community, which thou sawest upon the beast being NATO, and France is a member of the EU as well as NATO. Turkey is also a member of NATO. These shall hate the whore that rides upon the beast. Mystery, Babylon the Great, that mother of harlots, the United States of America, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire from those nuclear-tipped ICBMs, 200 million of which are going to hit the United States of America, the virgin daughter of Babylon, and turn her into the biblical lake of fire from sea to shining sea, and then a desolate, uninhabitable wasteland afterwards. So that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites, primarily from the United States of America. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shalom.